Welcome back, everyone. It's the Bourbon Judge. We are back at it, and I'm excited for today's episode. So today's episode is a one-off. This is pretty cool. So not reviewing whiskey. This is all about how do barrel picks work. So really cool, really exciting. I had a couple patrons reach out, as well as some subscribers emailed as well. And I was like, these honestly, it's great ideas. I mean, they're great questions that people pose, but great, it will make a great episode. So we'll dive into that today. But before we do so, I want to give a huge shout out to my newest patrons, my good friends Stephen Ansley and Andrew C. So Stephen and Andrew, thank you for becoming patrons and supporting the Bourbon Judge, as well as thank you for all my other patrons out there, all the ladies, all the men. I do appreciate all the support and love. All right, this hot topic. How do barrel picks work, right? And I'm going to keep this just high level, not go into too much detail, but just high level as a whole, enough to give everyone a good flavor. So the first thing you have to think about when you're doing a barrel pick, and this is like literally, we're talking about, this is the foundation, right? The foundation. Does your group have enough people that will end up, potentially buying enough bottles to sell out the entire barrel, right? So a full barrel is probably going to produce about 200 bottles, give or take 20 to 30 bottles. Obviously, as we all know, angel share, blah, 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 evaporation. We all get that, but about 200 bottles on average. So does your group have enough people in it that honestly warrants actually doing the barrel picks? That's the first thing, right? You really have to think that. And as I'll say, there are a lot of different groups, right? Like every state has their own bourbon society, whiskey society. Some states have probably 20 or 30 different ones based off of what city you live in. Like I know for me in Delaware, there's the Brown Water Society, Delaware Brown Water Society. There's, Delaware Bourbon Society. There's the First State Brown Water Society. And then again, every state, even near me, there's different, sections, and they all have different various Facebook groups. So that's the first thing. Is my group big enough, right? That's the first thing. Next thing is, when you think about doing a barrel pick, you all have to agree on, I think, honestly, one of the most important things. And you may have to even do a poll, but, are we going to be picking a bourbon or a rye? And if we are picking, let's say, for example, a bourbon, are we doing a regular bourbon or are we picking like a wheated bourbon? You don't want to just go into it just because you, the head of your, let's call it local Facebook group, might love wheated bourbons. Maybe everyone else in your bourbon society aren't big fans of wheated bourbon. So it sounds funny, but seriously, that's one of the things that you have to maybe reach out. Like I know a lot of groups, they'll do even a poll to say, hey, if we pick a bourbon, are you guys cool if we did a wheated bourbon, right? And you obviously want to go with the majority rules, right? You don't want to pick a bourbon or a rye, and just because you love rye and the rest of the group doesn't, then someone's stuck with, a couple hundred bottles. So that is a clear indication of make sure that you reach out to the masses before you do the barrel pick, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. Like they say, majority rules, right? All right. The next thing is you want to make sure that you're very realistic with the brand that you're going after, right? So when you say, okay, we want to do a barrel pick, we want it to be bourbon, be very realistic, right? You can't just go out there and say, as an example, hey, let's do a barrel pick of Pappy 23. That ain't happening, right? Seriously. Or let's do a barrel pick of William LaRue Weller. Sure, everyone wants that. Obviously, that's not going to happen. So you have to be very realistic about the brand that you're going after to do a barrel pick. It has to be obviously a brand of good quality. Everyone wants that. But you have to look at brands like, Sagamore Spirits, Wilderness Trail, New Riff, right? Good, respectable distilleries, great whiskey. You can't go in there just thinking that you're going to do a barrel pick of Pappy 23. It's not happening. So just being realistic, again, kind of setting expectations with your group. All right. Now the next category is major. And think about it in this way. You have to think about it from the partner you're going to be partnering with and why. So most whiskey tubers like myself and others, we work with groups like online retailers like Shared Pour, Sealbox, and so forth. Why? Because we're shipping it to all of our different patrons, friends, family members, and so forth. People can go online and buy it and get shipped to them. But most groups, if you're part of a Facebook group, more than likely you all live in X state or that surrounding area. So you probably need to partner with a local retail store. This whole process takes a long time, so make sure, hopefully you have a solid relationship with the either the manager of the liquor store or the owner. You can't just walk in one day and say, hey, my name's John Doe. Can we do a barrel pick? Typically, it's not going to go that well, right? Because that store is fronting X thousands of dollars to buy a barrel on your behalf, hoping that everyone is going to be able to come in and buy that bottle. So if you have a good reputation or a good relationship rather with a certain store in your market, and you can show proof like, hey, our Bourbon Society has 4,000 people, we're going to sell this bottle out easily. That's how you typically, I would think, kind of engage in the conversation and show that, you know, your group is serious about doing the barrel pick, and hopefully you can work it out with the store owner and so forth from a logistics standpoint. But that's it from either a logistics standpoint of either using a local retailer versus an online channel to distribute the bottles. Cool? All right. Next, when you think about the barrel pick process, now this is the fun part, sipping the whiskey. Most distilleries, they're going to give you one of two options. You can either go on site or they'll do virtual, where they will actually send out testing kits. So either on site or virtual. Not every distillery has both options. I'll be very clear. Some distilleries, they make you, if you're going to do a barrel pick with them, you have to be on site. That's some distilleries. Every distillery is completely different. Other distilleries, they're a little bit more open. They're like, hey, we'll mail you, 3 to 6 different, barrels, 2-3 ounce samples, and you and your group, you guys can get them, you can sample them, pick whichever barrel works, and then you kind of go from there. So that's one thing to consider, whether or not if you're willing to travel out to X distillery, or if that distillery allows you to, to ship the kits, the tasting kits to you, and then you can pick your barrel. So definitely from a location standpoint, that is definitely a key item, on-site versus virtual. The next item when it comes to, let's call it picking a barrel, is a critical item, very critical, selecting the team. So typically when you do a barrel pick, you would have maybe like 4 to 6, maybe 4 to 8 people that will help you to pick it. I think it's always important to work with people that have different palates than you, right? You don't want everyone having the exact same palate, like everyone, they're only big rye fans, right? Because if they're only big rye fans, they may not be able to pick the best bourbon out there, or they may not even care. So you want to have, honestly, let's just call it, people with different palates, people that prefer different things. Maybe you have some people that prefer more ryes, some people that prefer more, traditional like caramel brown sugar type bourbons, or some folks that are more like, prefer more like fruit forward bourbons, like think of actually looking at barrel bourbon, if you will. So you want to have people that with like a diverse type of a palate, so that hopefully you're picking the best whiskey for your group. I want to go back to one thing real quick on the last one, the on-site versus virtual. In my opinion, there is nothing like doing a barrel pick on site. Doing it on site is, by the way, one of the most fun experiences that you will ever have as a true whiskey enthusiast. So if you can go that route, that would be my preference. I meant to say that earlier. All right, coming back to the last item, right? So now you figured out who you're going to partner with. You figured out which distillery you're going to get, what kind of whiskey you want. You figure out all those logistics, all those details, and you've made your trip there. You've selected your whiskey. Now you're probably thinking, well, Judge, how long does it take for this whiskey to come in? That, my friends, is the golden question. So truly, on average, it typically takes from when you pick your barrel to actually the bottling and it coming to either the physical retail store, or even like the online channels, their actual, like their warehouses and stuff, before you can actually buy a bottle. It's typically, from what I've seen, best case, 4 to 6 weeks. But truly the traditional, like the most you'll see for the most part, is typically 8 to 12 weeks, sometimes even longer than 12 weeks. The whole whiskey world is not as simple as using UPS and FedEx, folks. I will say that it's not as quick and as easy as using UPS and FedEx. You can't just expect your bottles to be there in 4 weeks or 8 or even 12. I've had some that have been delayed even longer than that. So it just happens. The shipping and logistic companies that they work with, things tend to get delayed. Sometimes barrels might be misplaced for a period of time before they find them. It's a crazy world, but just know on average, you can expect anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks after you select your barrel for you to receive it. But again, like a lot of things in life, sometimes it may take a little bit longer, sometimes it doesn't. We shall see. Hey friends, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. 3 quick favors. Number 1, hit the like button. Number 2, drop me a comment. Let me know, have you ever been on a barrel pick? And if so, which one, and which one was your favorite, by the way? And last but not least, please make sure you also subscribe to the channel. Until the next time, friends, peace, cheers, and most important, salute. Take care.